Shadow Show.
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 Shadowing it.
I am not above the criticism I'm about to levy, but this is, I believe, a very tepid Halloween effort from our show. I believe in sports television, we are doing Halloween less enthusiastically than everyone else in sports television.
Well, when we do Halloween like almost every day, like the day kind of loses its luster.
Yeah, it's like Valentine's Day. You know, some people make a big deal of Valentine's Day, and then other people are like, every day is Valentine's Day for me. So that's kind of the approach we're taking.
I have no idea what you are. We will unveil whatever you are on video in a moment. But as I'm looking at you, are you a windmill? Like, what are you?
It's very uncomfortable, but I would rather reveal on camera than describe.
Oh, behave.
Well, yes, you're the one that's most enthusiastically Halloween. Jeremy is, he's wearing a mask and forearm fur. And
I'm a jerwolf, Dan.
Get it?
I mean, it is such a small lane you're trying to occupy. Sports pun guy. Like
no one else is doing it, Dano.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason no one has
Gotta
ever
find your niche.
tried that before.
I just found out our director thinks I'm Prince.
No. No.
I thought he was Elton John.
Stay tuned to see what I look like.
I mean, you just did a pretty good impersonation. Your father yesterday, one of his best shows ever, did he leave here floating on clouds because he brought props? He had 3 masks. He was so happy yesterday.
He was feeling himself so much that he sent Taylor to the game yesterday. He's like, I want to wag a finger in these guys' face. We sent Taylor, and then we quickly realized those guys were banned. So it's a funny egg to have on his forehead, my dad, of sending Taylor to find the 2 fans, and then they're not there.
Well, when he got on the plane, the news was that they were going to be permitted into Game 5, and then while he was in flight, the Yankees were like, oh, yeah, we can't really be attacking Mookie Betts. That's probably not a good idea.
Well, the Yankees weren't like that. MLB said, hey, you can't do this. And then the Yankees were like, fine, and that's where it all fell apart because all the energy was in those 2 guys, Dan.
I would say that the only World Series stat that the Yankees led in was attacking the wrists of Mookie Betts after an out. They
Errors.
And errors and base running mistakes, I suppose. I guess the positive one, the one that we'll remember for, 10 more minutes, is that day those fans did that thing.
Stop that. Stop that. It's the day of the dead. It's the day of the dead. It's the day of the dead. Stop that. Stop for the talking. I hear him chat. Walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls gotta tell me I'm awesome. Yeah. Hot like fire on the pot. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cage gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the sheets. We came for one man, forget my peace. We take the west, I'll take our east. I'ma put him in a cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise, move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys, not so tough, but it's the day of the day. Lines keep walking, yeah.
Happy Halloween!
Our director, Jason, sounding more than a little defeated. Again, Chris?
That was part of it.
Again,
That
Chris?
was like a little. No, it was the thing that's scary at the end.
It was a zombie hand taking off the screen, Dan. You weren't watching.
Always got to fade down, brother.
Chris, I know you were busy getting into costume. I just need you to stop making that particular mistake at the beginning of the show.
It was a dismount on the whole open.
What I was beginning to say is that Jason, our director, sounding really defeated, just said, I worked so hard to dress up this opening for Halloween, and then none of you dress up. That's Jason right there in the other room, dressed as a hot dog.
Yeah, I saw it was really funny this morning. I was going to the bathroom, and I saw Jason get out of the bathroom dressed as a hot dog, and also left the toilet seat up.
Oh, no.
Jason.
It's a hot dog, man. What do you want?
Unbelievable.
Bare bones crew in there, huh?
I don't know what Amin's costume is. I don't know what he's doing. It reminds me, in college one year, not unlike today, I just sort of forgot it was Halloween, and so I took a 12-pack of Miller Lite. I took the holder and I just put it over my head, and I went out for Halloween as beer cans, and it wasn't a thought of costume. It makes me feel like what you're wearing right now.
You're not getting candy, by the way, if you come to my house with that. Just that.
Yeah,
box on
it
your
was
head.
poor effort.
I'll
by
drink
me.
you.
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here, man. Just to be sitting across from you, wow. The Dan Le Batard. And all of you guys, really. Chris, Mike. Oh, my God, Mike's in the studio. Jeremy, Roy, Tony, everybody. Being here is so awesome. Guys, I'm a fan.
Oh, dear God.
Now I get it.
What are
That's
you
good.
clapping about? That's good, you're saying? Oh, old Elton John over there, old Prince, old bloated Prince over there
Do I
thinks
make
that
you
was
horny?
good?
I'm actually a porn star, just riding the wave of the week.
Are you guys not doing anything for Halloween? Because I legitimately forgot. I know that's a big upset around here. People were very disappointed when I walked in and I wasn't wearing a costume. Are you guys doing anything this evening?
I'll be trick-or-treating with my daughter. We're not buying this, by the way. We think you've got something up your sleeve and that you're going to like.
No.
You forgetting Halloween is just something's up here.
No. Not only did I forget Halloween, because the days are running together on me a little bit, Kristen came to me at the very end in a panicked emergency move, and she brought me, and I was very delighted that Metal Media evidently has a closet where these things exist, an emergency Pop-Tart costume. But then I was told that Mike Golick on DraftKings had just been a Pop-Tart, and look, man. If I'm gonna either not do Halloween at all or do it with some pride. I can't be wearing the same dress to a gala that Mike Golick is wearing.
It was Gojo, Golick Jr. I don't know if there's a difference there, but yeah, you
I
can't.
mean, one's
you
a
can't
dad
follow.
and one's a son.
You can't. If either of them are wearing a Pop-Tart, you can't follow that. On DKN, I mean, it's just like we're right after them.
Oh, my God. Classic show, self-referential hijinks. I can't believe I'm part of this right now.
Amin doesn't have much use for all of Halloween's rules. Amin is a bit of a rule breaker. I really hope you break character as that excited fan. I hope that's not what you're going to be the entirety of the show.
I love this show, Dan. I watch every single day on YouTube, on the DraftKings Network. Oh, my God, I just had a verbal gap. Oh, am I one of the guys? Am I going to have to go to the penalty box now? Oh, this is so cool.
This is going to get really old soon.
Going to get?
It's good so far.
Going to get really old. I was asking you a question, though. I was trying to do a show with one of my biggest fans.
All right. We're doing show. Halloween rules. It's weird because, Chris, I don't know if your kid is going through this. My kids were told, hey, Halloween is Thursday. Everybody dress up. But no masks and no inflatables and no gore. And I said, so no costumes.
But no Halloween.
Right? I mean, what Halloween costume is devoid of all those things?
Was
I
this
mean,
at
other than
school
the
you're talking?
At school, yes.
I kind of get the no bloody, but why can't I wear a mask?
I don't know.
Why can't I wear an inflatable?
I heard about this. I heard some parents complaining that their kids that masks were banned at school. Is there something that I don't know about?
Yeah, safety.
School shootings.
Yeah.
People can't just walk in with a mask and be like, oh, yeah, that's a kid, and then it's not.
Okay. That's good. All right.
You know? You feel me?
All right. You know
Happy
what?
Halloween, everyone.
You know what?
Like Jeremy walking into school right now, it's like, yeah, is he a kid? I don't know. He's a Jerwolf.
I was longing for the quaint day when we were just arguing over masks, and I didn't think it was going to escalate that quickly to school shootings. But yes, of course, that's the reason that you can't wear masks anymore, because we've got guns in our schools.
Also, as someone who has gone trick-or-treating a lot of times, the reality that oh, the trick-or-treating happens the night of Halloween, no matter if it's a school night or not. Doesn't make sense. All the grown-ups have their Halloween parties on the weekends. Why can't the kids go trick-or-treating on the weekends? Why don't we leave Thursday sacred? Because it's kind of ridiculous that we had Halloween parties last weekend, and we might have some Halloween parties this weekend, but the kids have to go on the 31st like it's some honor.
You think it should be on weekends?
Maybe
You
the
think-
last Saturday of October? Something
Yes,
like that?
the last Saturday of October should be Halloween.
Like Thanksgiving, you just keep moving it around so that it makes sure. Look at everyone's in agreement. This is
a great idea.
This is a controversial take. Put it on the poll at Le Batard Show. Should Halloween always be on a Friday? Because you are now rejecting it as a weekday holiday. You don't mind putting it on November 2nd. You don't care about that.
Well, it'll be November 1st. Or October 25th or whatever that was last.
I was just doing a random November 2nd in the future that's not October 31st, which I think of as Halloween. I wasn't thinking of the exact date this year. I'm just saying that you don't care at all. You don't want any – all you want is to be able to drink and not have to wake up for work in the morning. That's what you're rooting for.
No, I don't want my kids to have to go out trick-or-treating and then be told you can't have any candy because it's nighttime now and tomorrow you have school. And you got to get to bed, and that kind of stinks for them too. They want to go into the stash, and I'm like, not tonight, you're not.
It's a great take. Thanksgiving, Labor Day, those are moving targets.
Mm-hmm. Where are you guys on candy for kids? Like how judicious are you? How careful? Tony is welcoming a child into the world. He can learn some things from our parents around here. Stugotz famously would just walk through the neighborhood with a double gin and tonic until he was on his knees by the time he came home at 7:30 p.m. What is the correct way to do Halloween with the candy, with the kids? How much of the candy? You're only allowed so much candy before bed, correct?
Tonight, she can do whatever she wants. I like to live dangerously.
We're going to do this all show.
Wow, Chris did one of his classic signature impressions. I was here for it. Oh.
Leftover candy sticks around the kitchen for maybe 2-3 weeks until you have the you make the decision with you and your wife. We're just going to throw away the remaining candy.
It's me that I have to worry about more than my daughter.
Among the costumes that you guys have seen, so we talked about Myles Garrett video. Get some of the video that would show people what some people are doing, going to great lengths to be more clever than others, turning Halloween into something competitive. So you've got the pole vaulter from the Olympics, who the world record holder, who knocked over the what is that called? The pole to vault. What is it? Stick? Is that the formal
with
name?
his junk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it the stick? Is it it's the bar? Okay. He knocked over the bar with his bar, and we had Myles Garrett showing up to the game in Arnold Schwarzenegger costume. What are some of the other good costumes you guys have seen? This Amin costume is not a good costume.
Oh, classic Dan Byrne. Oh, my gosh. I hope my friends could see me now.
You're going to really do this the entirety of the show,
I'm a fan.
aren't you?
Can't see you with that blade in your face.
I know. It's not a very...
That doesn't look comfortable. Everything you're doing looks uncomfortable. It looks. You're going to be regretting that costume in about 3 hours.
I mean, I have a question. So you flew from Phoenix like you usually do.
Yeah.
Did you have that with you? Did you take that with you? Or is that something that you DIY'd here at the Elser?
All right, so I was hoping there'd be a Tony Top 5 about this, but this is what happened. I had a costume that I was going to bring with me. I forgot it. Last minute, I forgot to pack it. So when I got here, I had to DIY a costume. And so I shout out to Rose and Kristen and everyone back there. Carmen.
We don't need an acceptance speech.
I'm sorry.
We just don't need shout outs to everybody. You can tell them privately.
But I'm a fan of them too, because they're all part of the thing that makes me happy, which is the creation of this show. And so I wanted them to get their flowers.
I can't believe how good you are slipping in and out of character. It's amazing. It's like watching Daniel Day-Lewis. It really is. I can't believe how well you just go from loving the show to going back to Amin. It's like you hide behind a curtain and disappear entirely.
Well, I'm still a fan, but I don't know how I contradicted myself there. But anyways, Tony, we came up with the idea of a fan, and then I said, wait a second. We can do this a little bit better. So I got a hacksaw from GQ and like a blowtorch and stuff. Yeah, I had to hacksaw some stuff. Look, this is not easy to put together, but you know what? Worth it. Labor of love. Yeah. We're here now. How about that?
Thank you for mentioning the top fives because I do want to go to a couple of top fives with Tony. I don't know if you've seen this. We've been telling you for about a week. Meadowlark Media made a documentary with Netflix, and it is one of the top documentaries since it came out. It's among the top 10 everywhere it is that you look, and Tony was enjoying. Tony was, I don't know if you were too young, Tony, because you were 10 years old, right, when the Red Sox are coming back from down 3-0. On the Yankees, you were very young.
I was probably, that was what, 03, 04 when those two series, I was 12 and 13. So I was still like starting to realize, oh, wait, this is what happens here. Like, oh, that's a strikeout, this is that. Like, when you're young, you see the games, but you don't really watch them, right? Now you start watching them, it's like, oh, wow, they came back 3-0. Like, now the narrative is flipped, but 20 years have passed, and we've kind of forgotten a lot of stuff that's happened, right? So I remember things that happened, but now I'm being reminded of those things.
These spaces that the sports documentary will more and more end up encapsulating because all of the streaming services are trying to target fan bases are a super interesting lane because 10 years becomes nostalgia. Like, I can't believe that I'm watching Ray Lewis's defense, a defense that I saw in real time, and the 30 for 30 is, it's already old. The fact that we're going 10 years and assigning history to something, and this Red Sox team was 20 years, but it just wasn't that long ago.
It's pretty amazing that we're talking about the ALCS from 2004 before last night's clinching World Series win for the Dodgers.
Wow, Jeremy pointing out that baseball gets disrespected yet again in a more creative fashion. Oh my God. This is a dream come true. I'm seeing it all happen. I'm part of history right now.
It was a tough choice for me today to decide what should I celebrate more, the Yankees losing or Yankees losing this year, or the Yankees losing even more spectacularly 20 years ago. So I'd like to cover it all show, okay? I'd like to start with some of the origin story at the start of this century, but I'm going to have to kick Tony out to do this. Celebrate this with a victory lap, please. Go to another room and let's finally uncage the victory lap on people, because Meadowlark Media can take a victory lap today. This documentary has been very well received. As you guys know, the internet and movies in general, these are not places where people agree on things. So to have the internet agree, yes, I like this documentary. I'm kind of tired of all things Boston, all of them, but I still like this documentary. That's a victory for Meadowlark Media. So Tony, go find a place to give us a victory.
Dan, it's rare when the internet kind of looks at you and goes, thumbs up. That's kind of what we got, because it's like, it's not
rare.
number one yet, right? We're trending to number one. We're at number 7 in the top 10, but like, that's a good job.
I started rooting for the Yankees just so Meadowlark's documentary could be more successful.
Same.
Because when the Dodgers put that thing to bed last night, I'm like, damn, that's probably a couple 100,000 right there.
Amin wandered away. He was ready to get New York obnoxious, and now today he comes in. Baseball doesn't matter. Baseball's tired. Baseball's old. This wasn't the series any of us wanted. We wanted drama. We didn't want the Yankees to fall apart, look bad. Now they're going to spend the offseason yelling at those guys. You want to see the best guys perform. You want Aaron Judge and Ohtani and Soto, those guys batting in big spots every time. And Freeman ends up winning the World Series MVP and deserves it. Like 4 home runs. It's such a random thing, right? Any point in the season, I can take a 5-game sample and somebody's going to be bad during a 5-game sample. But I make it during the World Series, and Aaron Judge is going to have to wear that for a while.
It's not sexy to talk about, but this World Series was won with defense and base running. Like, that really, in a few games, the Stanton terrible base running getting thrown out, the errors by the Yankees, like the routine plays. Like, there were 3 or 4, and these are not tough plays. That's like, okay, that's an error, but that was a tough play. Almost all of
first
these,
base, yeah.
almost all of these were routine plays. Just, I can just imagine Aaron Judge waking up today. Holy crap.
Well, this is not particularly fair, but it's simply so. He had to perform this postseason because the season that he had was totally crazy. The regular season that he had, it was just every time he hit a fly ball, the ball ends up going out of the park. I don't think the nation at large is going to enjoy a Dodger victory in this spot. People don't really root for, hey, we've got the best regional television contract, and it helps us sign more players than everyone else, and we're going to be in on Soto. But I was conflicted during this World Series for one reason more than any other. I could not have the fan base that tries to break Mookie Betts' wrists, win the World Series. I didn't want to have an offseason of that. So I'm happy that the Yankees lost. But the place that I'm torn is, God, I wanted rewarded a team that didn't need any gloves and didn't know how to run the bases because they just hit the ball far. Because they just hit the ball 500 feet, and they got a stupid right field, and they got a home field advantage, and they're hitting it out to the opposite field because they're a keg softball team. Of course, they don't know how to run the bases. They only were built to trot around them. Running around the bases in a sprint is not part of it, and frankly, if I'm being honest, wearing gloves, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Soto, if they didn't come to the park with gloves, I don't think I'd notice or care.
I don't know if we know if Volpe was wearing a glove the way he played defense in this series.
Oh my God, that play ranging to his right and just spiking it into the ground is
throw it to Jazz. Just throw it to him.
It's so simple. Just toss it. It's right there. You had an opportunity, and that spiraled completely out of control. Starting with Aaron Judge, who actually is a really, really good center fielder, as evidenced by the catch that he made against Freddie Freeman, just dropping a ball hit right at him.
Such a momentum sport, isn't it? Like, when things go bad, they go bad quickly, and they go bad all in one direction. I do want to push back on one thing, Dan. You said that Aaron Judge is a 5-game sample, and I would say, no, he was trash the whole postseason. He had 8 hits the entire postseason. So,
agreed.
So it's much bigger than a 5-game sample of him not performing, and that was kind of what made the World Series a higher stakes, because everyone thought, look, the year he had, that means he's due. That means he's due. So every big moment when he gets up to the plate, I remember at Game 1, I was at Game 1, and in extra innings, he gets up there and it's like, all we need, man, is contact on this. Just get it in play. And again, like, I just thought, like, oh, this is the moment. This is when he's going to hit like a 600-foot rocket and we win the game spectacularly. Instead, he just came up short again and again, other than I guess 2 nights ago.
No, that wasn't worth anything. You're right. Not only that it wasn't just 5 games, it wasn't even just this postseason. Mm-hmm. Aaron Judge, this is a haunting thing, man. To have that season and have it fall apart at the end like that. I know I'm the guy who wants to celebrate the winners out here more than blaming the losers, but I do feel bad for how Aaron Judge is going to feel all offseason because he can't do anything about it now for months, and it's another postseason, and this one chewed up even Barry Bonds. Like, I remember watching Barry Bonds and just having him say, so frustrated, still hitting 200 in the postseason because of how they pitched him and because of how the pressure got ratcheted up. And he'd lose plate discipline. He just said flatly, my shit don't work in the playoffs. Like, said it flatly, and then post-steroids, he fixed all his postseason numbers in one postseason because he hit 400 home runs in one postseason. And maybe that'll happen for Judge, but one of the reasons this World Series is disappointing is because you didn't get much of anything from Judge and Ohtani, and those are the game stars, and we want to watch stars be stars. The franchises aren't the stars anymore. They'll get us to the television. The franchises, New York and Los Angeles, will get us to the television. But if you want us to stay and celebrate it and remember it and do documentaries on it 20 years from now, your stars got to be stars. That's Big Papi's got to be in the middle of coming back from down 3-0. It can't all be Kevin Millar. And so when we're watching Ohtani and Judge do that, it's like, and at 5 games, and we had moments. The thing gave you moments, like the idea that the Yankees were up 5-0 in that game and coughed it up at home. What was that sound?
That was just the sound of
Yankee
the frustration of a Yankee fan, man.
You're struggling with that costume, aren't you?
No,
you are.
You know what? I love being part of this so much that I will go through discomfort in order to commit to this bit, because bits is what this show is built on, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, behind the bit, You definitely don't want to miss those. Those have been very entertaining and informative to know all the behind-the-scenes things that happen to give us the entertainment that we've loved for the last 20 years.
Well, thank you for celebrating that. And we're going to celebrate with Tony in a second our victory lap at Metal Arc Media for making a documentary. But before we do that, while we're promoting things, celebrating yet another victory, Mike Ryan's oral history is another thing on the internet that has been almost universally celebrated. I have not heard a bad word about the oral history. Another one drops tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, this one's spicy.
Oh.
This one's really spicy.
What?
This one, truth be told, I had to save this one. I had to. I had to do a lot of politicking and behind the scenes. I had to save this one because this is where we cover a big breakup in this show, where the show was forever changed with Hawk leaving, and everybody has different sides. And Stugotz's almost convenient memory really muddies the waters here. So I think the listener's going to be a little bit confused, and I hope everyone has an understanding that, look, there are sometimes multiple sides to a story. But yeah, this one's was dicey making it, and I'm curious to see what the reaction is, not just from the fans of our show, but from the people involved.
You know, it's wild because from a fan standpoint, imagine being a Laker fan, but you started being a Laker fan like in 2008, right? And so they win 2 championships and they're great, and this is awesome, but you know there was a whole thing before this that happened, and it was also great, but it was a different great. But I didn't get to witness any of it. I would love to watch a documentary to teach me about it. That's what these oral history things are going to be about. So I want to know about this Hawk era because I didn't experience it at all. It was just something that I heard about from the elders. Oh, my God. You know what the greatest thing about being a fan is? The community of fans. There are other people, and we share these stories, and we share rumors and theories and stuff. So to debunk or to confirm many of these things by listening to this series, wow, what a joy.
Spicy, Mike Ryan says.
I like spicy.
Do you want to tease it in any other ways? I don't want to be unfair to any of the participants who could not speak up for themselves here, but is there any other framing or macro stuff without giving too much away? Because people have really enjoyed these. And if you're promising spicy, like one of the things that I am most grateful for around here is no offense to the others who compete to be a bigger fan of the show than the next person, but the people who have been here since the beginning, like since the very beginning, and have had their whole lives changed in the last 20 years with whatever it is that comes over 20 years, to ride with you from that space and remember this time and love what's going on at the end of those episodes where you're just going pure nostalgia on, oh, I remember that thing they did in 2006.
Yeah, I want to tip the cap to Ethan and Mike Malley, who have done a great job with this, particularly with those super cuts.
More acceptance speeches for the people outside.
It's just that it's not
do a good job.
It's not like a documentary. You don't get to see credits on this thing, and they work hard on it. But I've all the feedback has been positive. Again, I haven't seen a negative comment from our fans, but I don't even think that the legacy listeners have a deeper appreciation for it, because part of the feedback that I've heard from non-legacy listeners, people that maybe found us because of ESPN, is they're grateful to hear how the show got to the point where they discovered it.
Yeah.
And sonically, there was... I was worried about this bit initially, but I think it actually has legs.
It might work all show. and I
there.
kind of just like it. I kind of just having someone next
the
to me.
internet's so toxic, and just to have the positive reinforcement
It's been a rough week.
of a mean.
I didn't litter, did I?
I really do feel like Amin is more supportive than usual, and even though it's totally insincere, it's made me feel more comfortable. I think I want to put in our contracts that we get more fawning.
The way that this, here's how I'll tease this oral history. Dan says one thing, Hawk says one thing. They're usually not in total alignment, and Stugotz confuses the hell out of you.
Playing both sides.
It becomes very clear to me. I've done my own deduction because this was a mystery to me too. Part of this was me getting my own answers, because when Hawk left, I addressed it in this episode, I didn't really talk to Hawk about why he was leaving, how he was leaving, and I just took it on my own shoulders to just keep chugging along. So I've wondered about these things.
Do you feel like you have better answers now?
Yeah.
Until Stugotz started talking.
Well,
He confused me too while we were talking. Honestly, I don't want to give away too much, but I will say that a couple of different times I'm learning something from Stugotz for the first time that he is saying in a microphone, and I'm like, oh, that's so. Okay, you thought you were doing highly questionable with me. Okay.
So the call was coming from inside the house. I've deduced when it comes to Stugotz has very convenient timelines for him. You have convenient timelines for you. We try to parse through all those rationalizations.
It's an investigation.
It is, and maybe one of the lead investigators did it.
You.
I have goosebumps right now.
So I mean, it's a good tease. You're saying the oral history so far is one of the most universally well-received things we've ever done, and you're promising in its 4th episode the spiciest episode yet.
There's a lot of instances where someone goes, and this is how this happened, and a voice just bombs in, that never happened that way.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a mess in that regard. But yeah, look, feelings are complicated, especially when you have time and it confuses how things went and you apply different rationalizations for different eras and you think you're right. A lot of this has been pretty revealing. And my takeaway from what happened with the breakup after listening to this episode was it's unfortunate that it happened like this because there was a miscommunication along the way. There were some resentments that sometimes were vocalized. Sometimes those resentments landed certainly the wrong way. When we talk about the Mark Hochman sports comic thing, there was so much truth behind things that he thought were genuinely playful that it just complicated a bunch of things. So I listen to it as a fan of that era, as someone that considers Hoch a mentor and one of the greatest producers to ever do this. I look at what happened there as relatively sad, because it's forever changed your relationship. I think people that have closely followed Hoch's social media posts or anytime he hops on a Reddit AMA, that something went sideways here. And I don't think we get clarity on all of that, but I think we have a better understanding.
You okay, Amin?
It's just so touching.
Well, that's not touching. It's
sad.
It is sad. Sad and touching are two different things, aren't they? 'Cause touching is usually positive. It's not negative.
I
right?
do hope that a happy byproduct of this is that we can all have our disagreements, but I do think, and I'm holding out hope, that there will be some healing in the making of this, not just for Dan, and certainly not just for Hoch, for the audience too, that kind of felt some kind of way about it and was confused as to why the former producer of the show ended up going to QAM and for a brief time locally going directly head to head. So it's interesting one.
I've never said anything about any of this. This is the only time I've ever talked about any of it.
And it's the only time that I've had the opportunity to ask Hoch pointed questions. I've been aware of what he thought his side was from, like I said, social media posts, but I've never had the opportunity to kind of corner him with context and really press on certain disconnects. And it was only until really this morning when I heard the most recent draft, because I'm still moving parts along, that I think I got closer to what happened there. And I can tell you privately, because I'm going to leave it for the audience to decide because it's a little complicated. But I think one of the great mysteries, at least for my professional career, I have more clarity and I have a little bit more closure about it. And Stugotz is...
You've teased me. Like, I'm in on this.
There's something with Stugotz's timelines because he's kind of co-signing on some of your rationalizations. And when Hoch comes up with a totally different story and he says he has proof of certain things like, no, I wasn't talking to such and such because I was under contract with such and such. Maybe Stugotz had a different deal. So do you feel teased?
I am thoroughly teased.
So teased.
Thank you for making this. Oh, my gosh.
Somebody else has been teased. He's been sitting in or standing or running in another room here. It is time for Tony's Top 5. Tony is about to take a victory lap while holding an iPad. That's the wrong music.
Wrong music.
That is Tony's other Top 5. That's his football Top 5. This is the Victory Lap top 5. It's a totally different top 5, Elton John. Get it together, Fat Prince.
Don't we have music for that? What?
Yeah, I don't think there's music for that
Okay,
one.
that's fine. It's a different top 5
Chris
list.
is trying to
Chris,
fix
think
things up.
fast. Go to the subfolder called 1920s.
Yeah.
Just do this. This is
No.
Go to the 1920s folder and pull something out of your butt.
No.
Does Tony look like an NFL head coach?
Ooh, Coach Tony coming soon this week, by the way. Dan, thank you for throwing it over here. We are in front of Fenway Park, an incredible piece of history. Now, this top 5 doesn't need music, okay? Because we're going to be doing it to the sounds of Marcel Dinkins, the great-granddaughter of Mayor Dinkins. Incredible. She's doing stuff for Peloton. This is the Peloton app, by the way, which I'm going to be doing my victory lap on. We're going to be doing 15-minute interval running. So I'm going to have Jesse hold this so I can actually follow along with what's going on while giving my top 5. So, Dan, are you ready for the top 5 here?
I am, though. Although, in my mind,
okay.
the victory lap would be something that by the time we came to you, you were already a little bit winded.
No, but see, that's not how the Peloton app works, Dan. I got to make sure that we're
Fair
doing
enough.
it by.
That's how the spin room works. I was hoping
this is
something
not
close
that.
to the spin room.
No,
Okay.
this is not that.
I think it's exactly the spin room with just a
I
different
don't-
green screen.
I don't
think
see
Well, that's a green
anybody's.
screen.
I don't
Green
see
screen.
green screen. I'm in Boston. What are you talking about?
Okay, so go ahead. What do you got? Number
All right.
5.
No, we got OLIs, Dan. So
Sorry.
this is the top 5 of things I was reminded by Meadowlark Media's incredible documentary that's sitting atop. It's a 7 right now in Netflix on the planet, though, which is exciting.
Yeah.
All right.
It's 7. Put it on the poll, please.
I gotta go to
Juju,
3. Hold on.
At Le Batard Show is in the top 7. Is 7 of 7 atop any lists? Go ahead.
All right. OLI number 1, Mariano Rivera. Wow, he was electric, huh? He was really good.
It's harder to do the victory lap jogging and talking.
Well, yeah, and I got to look at my phone, too. But Mariano Rivera, Dan, you think of him like, oh, yeah, he was great. Enter Sandman, the whole bit. But when you see him and these guys talking about him, like, oh, no, he doesn't make mistakes on the mound. If he made a mistake, you're the one that's lucky. He was just a lot better than we remember. Thank you.
That's an OLI, huh?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we remember him as the best ever. And
Yeah, but it's been 20 years, Dan. We're, All right. OLI number 2. Oh, yeah, Bronson Arroyo had cornrows. Forgot about that.
That's what I think of every time I hear that name.
Ooh, pizza this way. Hold on. Oh, let's go
Other way.
this way.
There you
Hold on.
go.
No, there we go. Okay. Number 5. We'll start here in a solemn place, but a place that reminded us of the greatness of him. Rest in peace, Tim Wakefield, the boy. Good dude. Number 4. Man, baseball mattered back then, huh?
Right?
Wow.
Not anymore, Tony.
It's so crazy. It is nuts how much baseball mattered just 20 years ago.
People were hanging out of cars, honking wind, like everything was incredible. The scenes were amazing. Seas of people just everywhere enjoying baseball. And then now it's like Jeremy with a wolf mask on, and we're like, yeah, okay, shut up, Jeremy. All right, number 3. Shots before Game 6 and 7 of Johnny Walker was electric. Back when you could do things, Dan, that you probably can't get away with now.
Old charming Kevin Millar drinking before games.
Just a shot. Don't
Can
get
I
crazy.
jump in here and remind people that this victory lap is presented by Peloton? Find your push, find your power with Peloton.
All right, and your push and your power.
Chris has some foggy glasses over there. I don't know what's going on. He's on the Peloton,
Well,
too.
not just. Can I just point out that not only does Chris get the slogan wrong, but then he punctuates the ad by picking his nose
the
on
slogan
camera.
wrong.
It is pushing power.
picking
You
his
nose.
said it
slogan.
exactly right.
Also, the foggy glasses are a throwback to when Dan used to wear glasses. They used to fog up in the old Cleveland studio because it was so hot in there. Wow, we're really celebrating our history.
All right. Number 2. Theo was 28 when he took over the Boston Red Sox.
It's crazy.
What?
It's crazy.
I mean, I remember he was 28, but now being 32, I'm like, damn, at 28, give me the keys.
Yes, he's.
We're going to make it happen, baby.
He's a Hall of Famer. The Cubs and the Red Sox hadn't won in a very long time, and he won in both places.
We're going into 8 speed here with Dinkins. Hold on. All right, number 1, Dan. Kevin Millar, Hall of Fame, bro. There's nobody. I want to be Kevin Millar when I grow up. Kevin Millar is the most electric guy on TV outside of Jason Garrett.
It was an electric top 5.
He was so good, Dan.
Thank
He's
you.
just got the vibes. The vibes were all the way up here. Incredible teammate, incredible bro, like Hall of Fame level bro.
Yeah, I'm with that assessment. Actually, we saw wasn't Kevin Millar either a scab or a Rule 5 player or something? And
Yeah, he was
came
going to
up-
go to Japan, and then Theo
they were actually very frowned upon. You don't usually claim guys that are going to go to Japan. It's known that they're going to go over there and they're going to do their thing. So everybody was pissed, and that was a part of Theo's legacy that he's like, I got to be bold. I got to be the guy to do things that nobody's done. And then he did it, and all of a sudden, bam, curse broken.
It's good analysis, though, by Tony, because Kevin Millar is not only Hall of Fame bro, he's Hall of Fame bro with enduring stay power, unlike Dan Uggla or someone of that ilk. Like, Millar was actually, you realize that Millar gets forever stardom in Boston as an otherwise, like, pretty mediocre player.
Oh, come on.
Whoa,
what are you doing there?
He had some good years.
Yeah.
Even before the Red Sox, he had some good years. But I think he's got staying power because he's such a good media personality. Like A.J. Pierzynski stuck around. Dan Uggla is just not doing media that way.
It's like those two guys from the Yankee game the other night had the Yankees won the World Series. They'd be like Kevin Millar.
I feel like people remember Kevin Millar, the player, as just the guy who had the similar Gary Sheffield stance.
In 20 years, Meadowlark will do last night's series in documentary form.
Can I stop running now?
Shipping Container Community Theater presents Grim Reaper, A Day in the Lifeless.
We gather here today to remember and reflect upon the indelible mark left by a series of takes, each more remarkable than the last. While some may say that his takes were misguided or perplexing, it's important to recognize the courage it takes to stand firmly by an opinion, even if the whole world might disagree. Stugotz's bad takes, though they may have sparked debates, bewilderment, and a fair share of head-scratching, they will forever hold a special place in our hearts. May they burn in hell. Speaking of hell, Art Briles.
Stugotz predicted yesterday that the Yankees would rally to win that series. His words mean nothing. I don't know why anyone listens to the things that he says about sports. The other stuff is funny and great. I just don't know why you would take his sports opinion seriously.
I got to say, this has been a magical day for me, but if there's one thing I'm disappointed about is I wish Stugotz were here. I wish I could have witnessed the banter between Dan and Stugotz lying and all those things. And it's nice, though. It's nice to kind of refer to it and watch it in video, but it would have been nice to have it live in front of me. Won't lie.
I think I'm ready for that character to be done. I'm not sure. I go between. I vacillate between liking the character as a fan, feeling supported by him, and then wanting him to just go away.
Oh, I know. I'm having fun. I'm having a ball, guys.
Okay. At Le Batard Show, put it on the poll. Have you ever said I'm having a ball while having fun? At Le Batard Show. We're going to get to Pablo Torre in just a second.
Ooh.
But Mike Ryan pointed out something, and I've mentioned before, the numbers of baseball are kind of my first introduction to math, liking sports math. And so you can imagine my delight when, 20 years ago, Moneyball makes an appearance, and I become super fascinated by how baseball figures out how to win in the margins with coupons, because you can be smarter than other teams by finding value all over the place. And Billy Beane sort of changes the paradigm, but now all the teams that do the Moneyball stuff now also have money. And whatever was that era of enlightenment and innovation 20 years ago now gets buried under the best regional TV contracts win.
So this is a tweet that comes from Annie Iyengar. Moneyball aged so poorly, man. The A's aren't in Oakland anymore. The two richest teams are back in the World Series. And Jonah Hill's real-life character is responsible for the single worst trade in NFL history.
That part's crazy, right? A guy, Paul DePodesta, went from being Billy Beane light in baseball to just running a football franchise, and he's the guy who made the Deshaun Watson trade? I didn't even realize
he's part of the team. He works in collaboration with their GM, Andrew Berry, but make no mistake about it, this was a Jimmy Haslam call.
That's crazy, though, to think that somebody from baseball's secret front offices, does that happen much in basketball? I mean, does anyone make a jump over from one sport to the other? Paul DePodesta went from being a baseball expert to going and running the Cleveland Browns because they thought he had numbers and math advantages.
No, it doesn't happen often. You get a couple of low-level analysts that may have worked for a baseball franchise that come over and work in basketball from an analytics standpoint, but in terms of someone of power and note, that typically doesn't happen coming from another sport. You do see people going to other sports, though. Actually, I think that Sashi Brown went from Cleveland to the Washington Wizards, but not in a power role. It was kind of like a consultant kind of thing, and I don't even think he's with the Wizards anymore. So
there's a lot of analytics guys from the United States and the four major sports here making their way over to Europe.
Yep.
And joining American ownership groups that have taken over European soccer clubs. A lot of baseball guys have made that move.
So smart. This conversation.
Pablo Torre, speaking of smart, does a podcast that is universally getting applauded. A lot of Metal Arc things are getting universally applauded. Pablo Torre finds out. Some of you may have been introduced to Pablo. This is one of the first times he was ever on our show. Pablo Torre wandered over after writing 4 or 5 articles and decided, I'm going to go for all the cotton candy in television. And he was on with us. Was this the day that Jesse Ventura was on? Was this was all on ESPN Radio? Okay, give them the context here.
I got in all sorts of trouble when I questioned 9/11. Well, I've been vindicated because in the new chapter in the book, the 9/11 report has 28 redacted pages that we're not allowed to see, that George Bush redacted them. Well, Congressman Cook and Senator Graham were on the intelligence. I'm not lobbing it out there. It's what's in the 9/11 report that they won't let us see. There's 28 redacted pages.
For the audio audience, I will let you know that is visually uproarious. If you want to see it on YouTube, you will see while Jesse Ventura is talking that Pablo Torre, in an orca mask, showing only his face, a face that is truly horrified because he can't believe, I think, what's on the radio that Jesse Ventura is saying. Was this one of your first? This wasn't one of your first appearances with us, was it?
Oh, it absolutely was. I guess. Yeah, it absolutely was. It was one of those moments where Now I think everybody in your audience knows that this is a thing that happens. Someone like Chris Cody will say a thing, or Billy Gill dressed as, what was Bill? I forget what Billy was dressed as when you guys went viral on Fox News.
The sad baseball, like the old timey baseball guy.
Yeah. Like now we know to expect charged political rhetoric to be part and parcel of being dressed in a highly flammable foam orca suit. But that was my first exposure to it. It was kind of my virginity being taken in that regard, and it was traumatic.
Bob Woodward is going to join us later in the show. This is
that tracks.
This is Old Bob Thursday. We got Bob Costas and Bob Woodward. Can you just walk us through, though, Pablo? I know a lot of people, we'll get to the silly stuff and the serious stuff and your podcast in a second, but I know that a lot of people that are watching all of this get tired of me shoving journalism down their throat. But Bob Woodward, an old-timey reporter who does the truth with facts the right way at a time that still should matter, headed into an important election. Can you sort of walk me through what you see happening with the Washington Post, the LA Times, with their billionaires? Now USA Today is also not endorsing anyone at a time where, like, this part's frustrating to me, okay, Pablo, because only one side has to fight fair. The other side, you're trying to win a fight fair with journalism standards against unfair fighting. So these billionaires being scared to take a side at a time when newspapers have always taken a side with community judgment in hand, trying to bring facts to a discussion. You make what of what's presently happening in journalism a week before this, the most important election of our lifetime?
Journalism has always been looking for a savior. It's always been looking for a business model that could support the news. And I just say this now when I talk to journalism classes, I have to remind people, like, the news was not the reason newspapers were a business. Like the classifieds were, right? Like the reason you would buy a paper back in the day, why they would sell enough to support journalism, was because of other stuff. The news journalism was always riding on the back of another business that supported it. It was the classifieds in newspapers that got eaten by Craigslist and the internet. At ESPN, of course, it was the cable television model, which was its own thing. Now, of course, everything is basically fending for itself. And at a certain point, it became very logical for newspapers to hope to be saved by a benevolent billionaire. And so Jeff Bezos seemed to be that, right? Democracy dies in darkness, all of that stuff. And of course, it is revealed that the benevolent billionaire is, in fact, something of an oxymoron. It is a contradiction in terms because, of course, the billionaire is a billionaire not because they want to support the thing that doesn't make them money. They want to support the thing that makes them money. And so Jeff Bezos wants to support Blue Origin, his private space company, more than he wants to have an editorial board weigh in on controversial political issues that could deter the business that he actually cares about. And so for me, Dan, like, all of this is, in retrospect, the most predictable and logical outcome. And I think, I think about Wordle in times like this. And I think about Wordle because the New York Times figured out something that these other newspapers didn't, which is that our new business model, the thing that our journalism should ride on the back of like some sort of whale, is Wordle. We need games. We got to sell stuff that people will buy. We can't hope for the benevolence of a billionaire because that isn't working out so great.
That was so smart and educational and informative. It took me all the way back to that first time I saw Pablo in that whale costume, all the years back. The one thing I'm missing, though, can we get the music, the highfalutin music?
This made me think of Wordle, says Pablo Torre, while making quote marks with his, what are those? The fins? Are those fins?
Yeah, fins.
Those are fins. You made so many quote marks while not having fingers there. What do you make of the
This is a middle finger, by the way, to the benevolent billionaire, just for those
middle fin
scoring at home. Yeah,
it is a middle fin. Yes, thank you, Tony. What do you make of this cruel, I'm not sure it's irony, but it's certainly painful, the idea that 200,000 plus subscribers, would cancel the Washington Post, ostensibly to hurt Bezos, who doesn't care if that loses $77 million a year because he's just got a bunch of toys and Amazon doesn't have to pay taxes. And he's not actually interested that much in whether the Washington Post makes money. He just wants to own the Washington Post.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt the journalists, guys. Like I know it's confusing when this benevolent billionaire is also the newspaper guy, but he really the take that is the most accurate, which is of course the take that is gonna go nowhere, is that if you really don't like Bezos, you want to protest, you should cancel your Amazon stuff. And no one's gonna do that because we all want, to buy flammable orca costumes on Amazon Prime so you can ship it so that you can have journalism monologues the next day because you forgot to buy this at a store. It's just not going to happen. But that is the catch-22. There is a bit of a, how do they call it? Totally fucked economic dynamic here.
Can I ask a serious question and say that are we mad at Jeff Bezos just because the Washington Post didn't endorse a candidate? Meanwhile, him owning the Washington Post, making sure it's still in business, has given us a lot of great journalism.
I am mad at Jeff Bezos because I thought he was sitting stuff out on this particular issue where newspapers have always been separation between the money and the editorial judgment. It's what kept it pure. I understand that it's a business and it has to be a business, but the thing that was always separate, Pablo, I'm not being naive about this. Like the reason this is the story it is to me is because the billionaires never do this, not in a free press. Like that's not how it works. The money is separated from editorial.
Well, and also it's the timing of this, right? If you're going to have a new, and look, I guess it would be fair to say, we believe that editorial boards as a concept are antiquated and that all they do is get in the way of even the reputation of the journalists, right? Again, there is Amin is sort of like hinting at something that is meaningful, which is newspapers are objective reporting, but also an editorial board where people opine by definition. They weigh in on the matters of the day, the most important matters of the day. And if you're going to say, well, maybe we should lean towards the objectivity on some level, that is a fair argument. It is an argument against the concept of editorials in general. I disagree with the argument, but leave that to the side. It's the timing, though, of saying, you know what? We're not going to do this 11 days or whatever it was ahead of the election while these private contracts with a deliberately and transparently vindictive and, in fact, corrupt presidential candidate being someone who is going to go to you and say, how did you do my bidding? And will you deserve the government contracts that I would give if I am again the president? So it's not hard to see the real logic, even if there is a plausible fig leaf of another larger argument against editorials, which is a journalism nerd argument more than it is the actual issue at hand, I think.
But Pablo, you're applying a logic that, why doesn't that apply to Elon and Rupert Murdoch? Because they've picked sides. They have media companies. They're using those media companies to advance an agenda. Elon Musk has government contracts. Maybe he stands to gain possibly more. Maybe he can flip X for a profit because of what he's doing to advance this cause right now. But he has plenty of government contracts right now with an administration that is not conservative. So I think that you can parse what you're saying a little bit and hold up examples of these guys probably think that what they're doing is brave, and Jeff Bezos isn't reacting with the same kind of bravery.
Look, the Elon thing, there's just so much there right now, Mike. I don't know if you guys have seen the reporting from Wired that just came out about what he's doing with, like, getting out the vote. And we're going to put people allegedly in the back of U-Hauls who have no idea that we're getting out the vote for Donald Trump and Elon Musk specifically. And by the way, they won't pay for your motels allegedly if you don't door knock and do. Look, the point being, I don't know. Elon specifically, right? I don't know if this is an argument now about, like, should there be government contracts handed out to billionaires? I believe that, of course, if you want to go to space, you got to. Now, we did an episode about going to space, actually, about those astronauts who were stuck in space. NASA sucks now. This is
yes, Pablo. Yes,
unfortunately
yes,
true.
Pablo. American systems are failing. Yes, that is correct. Continue.
And so the benevolent billionaire saving not merely newspapers but the space program. We're all in this together, right? And so is it bravery in any way to see that your market inefficiency is in fact that the government is crumbling, and also you're going to campaign against that government while extracting billions from that government, and then pull up the ladder behind you as Elon Musk is doing and saying, we got to get rid of government contracts, guys, because you've already gotten the billions. It all I mean, look, it's not stupid as a strategy. It is just allegedly kind of evil. So, do with that what you will.
Yeah. No, me and Chris have been laughing throughout because you're delivering it all in an orca costume.
So important what you're saying.
You're pointing to punctuate your very important points during a very difficult time. Yes, everyone's bought. Elon Musk is also willing to drive that monster truck of racism, and he wants to build a future community in Mars so that he and 1 million people could live up there and he could be King Elon when we've used up the earth.
Quick thing as the Orca reporting from New York, right? I like how a lot of these talking points in general, like New York is a shithole. Like, look at this. Look at this crime. They can't live here anymore. And they're like, you know where we got to go? A place with literally no habitable environment. Let's send those same people who are worrying about New York being uninhabitable to a place that can't support life. Cool.
Before we let you go, I have failed here, and I need to apologize to the community of listeners around this show because it has taken me way too long today to get to the fact that Pablo and Amin finally doing the important investigative work that Meadowlark Media was built to fund and to support. They went to the haunted basketball hotels. Pablo and Amin stayed amid the ghosts. And yes, Chris Cody, look at Chris Cody, how delighted he is. Yes, they did some reporting, both of them.
Charlotte.
And Charlotte Wilder. Oddball was there. So Pablo, tell us what's on Pablo Torre Finds Out.
It is a ghost story. The spookiest story of all. Spookier than even government contracts and privatized space programs and newspaper editorial boards being destroyed. It is a story of two intrepid journalists, Amin El-Hassan and Charlotte Wilder, who collected, I believe, items that comprise the most ridiculous expense report in Meadowlark Media history. Ooh. And they stayed at the haunted hotel known as the Skirvin. And we found out some stuff. They found out some stuff. It's actually really... Dare I toot my own blowhole? It's a really good and ridiculously stupid episode.
Wait a second.
It's journalism.
Pablo,
it's ghost journalism.
Pablo.
What?
Did Stugotz expense a trip to Colorado to watch The Dead?
I'm pretty sure he's expensed like 3 different vacations. I'm pretty sure.
Touche.
Haven't you done weirder expense stuff? Like, what's your top 3 dumb expenses as you? And what did you guys find out?
Well, I'm not gonna give it away. I mean, not gonna give it away. But yes, we expensed some Ghostbuster type equipment because we were going to look for ghosts at this haunted hotel in Oklahoma City, and we tried to determine whether Oklahoma City has a home court advantage as a result of these ghosts.
The most ridiculous thing I expensed is, well, 2 things. Number 1, this. Number 2, I went to the Yankee game last night, guys.
Oh, so it's your fault.
Oh,
you saw Taylor.
You were preening. Wait a minute. Actually, yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a second. I still don't understand how the Codys expense Taylor going out there, but can you guys get for me the sound of a typically smug, and I understand that that's redundant, a typically smug Pablo Torre?
We don't need to do that.
At the World Series, at the World Series last night, there's some incriminating video of you doing the bad pun lane that Jeremy's trying to occupy, that you were gloating. You were feeling yourself. You were feeling New York a little bit when they were up 5-0, and you put up a video.
No, they're up 5-0. I can explain it. They're up 5-0, and
I'm sorry for not foreseeing the worst defensive inning in the history of Major League Baseball, all of which occurred with 2 goddamn outs.
Taylor puts a camera in Pablo's face, and Pablo looks at it and goes, "Looks like some people were too quick to judge." And then they blew the 5-run lead.
Bravo, Pablo. Really good job on that.
Yeah. Way to go, Pablo. So Pablo Torre finds out. Anything else we need to know? I would assume that ghost stories would be interesting to people. I would also assume that Amin, who is, I believe, a lord of the dark energies, that he doesn't believe in any of this nonsense, that Amin's not scared of ghosts.
Well, we tested everyone's priors, and I just want to tell you, in case you weren't familiar with the specific legend of the Skirvin, this ghost seems pretty horny.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
All right. Vroom. I think that Patrick Ewing was terrified. There are athletes all over that simply will not stay in the hotel. Stan Van Gundy would tell the story of teammates of Patrick Ewing would go knock on the door and then run away howling.
Classic. Classic. That's when you and your boys are in the hotel room for like AAU ball.
I'll give you guys a DLS exclusive that I did not do on Pablo's show and I did not do on Oddball. There was an elaborate plot to plant a Bluetooth speaker in Charlotte's room and then walk away and then play ghost sounds off my phone through the speaker.
That would have been great.
The good news is that Charlotte, spoiler alert, got freaked out regardless. So it was not necessary in the end.
All right. Thank you, Pablo. Pablo Torre finds out. Happy Halloween. It is good seeing you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. That podcast continues to be a great deal of fun. What are you laughing about back there, Mike? Are you laughing at
Amin agreeing? Yes. It's a
awesome.
great podcast.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love the extended universe that you have created, Dan, of all these offshoot shows. They go on to have a life of their own, and they're different, but they still have like little similarities and connections to this show. It just makes the overall experience so much richer.
Thank you, fan. I wanted
They're
to
like menu items.
I wanted to add, yes, Oddball is different on the menu than it was last year. Different spot on the menu. It's still 4 or 5 days a week, and Pablo Torre finds out is 3 days a week. And there are things that we're proud of around here. As right now, we're taking victory laps for the moment at Meadowlark, but it's a contract year and the pressure's on, and we've got to cover sports correctly. So I wanted to go back for a second here and talk to you about a couple of sports things that we've skipped right past over. And one of them is Tony blaspheming, I think, against the legend of Wemby already by anointing Chet Holmgren. And he wants these stick figure scarecrows dominating the league, and all of these just crazy extraterrestrial type physical people. Tony's willing to elevate Chet Holmgren to a place I am not willing to elevate him.
Look, Chet and Wemby did battle last night. It was a aesthetically interesting game because they're just so much bigger than everybody else and so much thinner than everybody else. So you're watching the games and you're like, wait a second, this is so weird. What I will say is Chet is having an incredible first couple of games, and it seems like he's starting to come into his own. Blocks, defensively, he's in good spots. He's trail threes are hitting. Like his offensive game, I think right now, and I mean, you can see if I'm wrong about this. I feel like his offensive game right now is better than Wemby's.
I would say it's more efficient. Like you could see what Wemby does on the floor and say to yourself, that's special. And it has a ceiling that's incredible. I think Chet, by virtue of a couple of things, one of them being it's technically his third year, not his second year. He had a whole year of not playing but being in an NBA environment. But also, Chet has to be efficient because of where he plays right now. He plays for one of the best teams in the league. This is a team that has championship aspirations. He doesn't have kind of the luxury of, let me just try this shit and see if it works. Whereas Victor has it's encouraged because everyone understands if we're going to get to that level, it's because he has fully realized his full potential. They're different. They're different players and they're in different situations. But I agree with you in the sense that this is a rivalry. Because if you look around the league, who's the guy who could be the anti-Wemby? It's got to be someone who's tall and long and agile, and Chet seems to fit the bill. And Wemby might be the only person where Chet's like, oh, thank God, I'm not going to get beaten up tonight. It's someone who weighs as much as I do.
It is pretty cool that they both ended up in such close proximity to one another with franchises that already had an established rivalry. So, and the fact that they both look very different than everyone else in the league,
but they also look the same. I mean, one other question: when you think about guarding Wemby, right? you see him and it's like, do you want to put somebody, try to get his size? The problem is he's quick enough to go around them to make things happen. But what they were doing last night, Alex Caruso, is kind of like getting under him and forcing smaller guys that are stronger to be able to put him in uncomfortable situations where he's like, oh, this guy's a little shorter, but I can't get around him.
So the Rockets tried the same thing the other night with Brooks, Dylan Brooks, where it's like, I don't want to put Jabari on him. I want someone, like you said, smaller, stouter to push him out, and then let the long guy come be kind of the help and the bother right there. Some nights it works, some nights it doesn't. And when it does work, it's a lot about Victor right now. His core strength isn't where it could be because he's still young and he's still kind of learning all this stuff. So as he gets stronger, that's not going to work as much. By the way, this is something that's been employed for years. They used to do it to Dirk, right? Like the Warriors when they beat the Mavericks in the first round, they didn't put Biedrins on them. They put Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson and Al Harrington, all guys that were smaller, but they were physical and they tried to hit them up from underneath.
Well, I wanted to talk with you guys about something here that I think gets lost in that story, and it's going to be worth watching because it's a great star league, personality league, rivals. Make it something that's optically fun. Make it black French guy and make it white guy, and both of them are stick figures. But one of the things that hasn't happened, I don't think, nationally, it still feels like OKC is a regional team because people don't really know outside of basketball. Mm-hmm. Obviously, everyone knows in basketball that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is better than both of these two human beings. He's more valuable than both of these human beings, and here comes his star turn. He did not get it in the playoffs last year. Kyrie and Luka got what was that shine going against the Celtics. But his story and this team's story is now a part of the next Starting Five series on Netflix.
I'd like to disagree with you there because what a pro wants. Inescapable star power.
That and the Skims commercial, right? He was the first NBA athlete to be an ambassador for the Skims brand, which has made literally billions of dollars for the Kardashians.
So where you guys are disagreeing with me, you think that OKC is already a star vehicle that doesn't need to do any more winning right now so that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander belongs in the documentary that Netflix is doing, where now they're following Jaylen Brown and Kevin Durant and Halliburton and James Harden.
No, I just wanted to remind you and our great nation of the time when it was held hostage by a single commercial that aired inexplicably more during the NHL playoffs.
You know what's crazy is you just rattled off the names. And yes, you're right. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has another stratosphere of stardom in front of him. But as Tony whispered in my ear, and by the way, how cool is it to show within the show, to experience that and have things fed to you? And that's like, it gives you ideas. Guys, I cannot recommend it enough. We're following James Harden? Is that
yes, James Harden, Kevin Durant. Yes, James Harden.
I don't want to hear other names. I want to hear following James Harden.
Everywhere?
Everywhere?
I would assume. I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell me because I haven't seen the first five or the starting five before this starting five.
Really good.
But how much access are they trading because they're done in partnership with these players and nothing too bad is going to be exposed? You guys think we're really going to get into the strip club scene on Netflix?
Whoa, you said Netflix? It, Dan. You said it. I mean, if we're following James Harden for his career in this year, I mean, we're going to end up in some interesting places.
And James Harden, one of the beautiful things about him is he's not someone who shies about it. It's not like, oh, I have an image, I can't have that out there. He very much leans into it. So if he's going to do some things that are maybe tread on the TV 14, maybe towards TVMA type material, I think he's the great ambassador for it. I'd love to see it. You know what? I want to be a fan of that too.
It feels like in the starting five we had a lot of like family men this series.
Yes,
we had
did.
LeBron, we had Jason Tatum. Anthony Edwards became a father during the season.
Sabonis is a family
man.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at our other group of guys. We're like, all right, we got some young guys. We got some guys that are single. We got some guys that get out there.
Ratings are down, and this league has to be handed over. We've had a lot of years of Harden and Durant and LeBron. We've been really spoiled. It's been a 15-year run of the same guys, and now Anthony Edwards wants in the game. Like, we've got the league and Jaylen Brown's in this series. Jaylen Brown, because the Celtics are now, they lose for the first time last night, but the Celtics are now in the they are in the legacy business of, during this era, are we the ones who are going to knock off Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren before they start fighting Wemby for the titles?
I love Shane Gillis-Alexander. I think he's totally set for stardom.
You have
Love
said
him on
that.
SNL.
You have said that so many times that I'm scared around.
I
that
see
name.
the speed bump for you.
It is. I am. You've seen it a couple of times.
You're like
now, Tony.
Shea Gillis Alexander.
Shea Stadium.
I wanted to ask you guys though. I have nothing wrong here on what OKC is as a team. The difference between whatever OKC was last year and this year wouldn't be a monster jump by Gilgeous-Alexander. It would be by Chet Holmgren. You need it to be by Chet Holmgren, correct? He's got to become a number 2 player that can challenge someone like Wemby.
Or Jalen Williams has to have a jump, and then Chet has a gradual rise. Challenging Wemby, not necessary to win a championship at this point. At this point, you're challenging Jokic. That's the guy they've got to take out, so to speak, in their conference. Even though everyone's like the Denver Nuggets are not as good as they used to be, like rumors of their demise are greatly exaggerated. They're still great. They're still going to be an obstacle for any team in the West. But for them to be successful over time, to turn this into more than, we had one final strip or whatever, it's got to be something more than that. It's got to be Chet becoming the superstar that we expect him to be in order for this to turn from a 1 or 2 year thing to a 10-year thing.
To me, their best case scenario with Chet, at least at the very moment, is the fact that he could be their Kristaps. So if Jalen Williams can kind of develop into that really consistent and legitimate number 2, where he and Gilgeous-Alexander can essentially be their version of Tatum and Brown, and then you get Caruso filling in that Derek White type of role where you have defenders and role players around these guys, that's where seemingly this season they could take the leap where Chet Holmgren becomes more of an X factor than someone who needs to be relied on every single night.
You using those hands, there's so much more effective than Pablo using those fins. There's something here with the ability to punctuate points. Pablo was annoying me with how often he was doing quote marks with fins that didn't work as quote marks. Let's do Thursday Thunder, please.
Bolt me. Bolt me? No, the sound effect. There we go. All right, so it's another complicated Thursday night because there's
Classic
injuries
Chris.
to Houston. I'm not exactly sure who's going to be available, but we want to honor Thursday Thunder by bringing everybody's attention to the National Football League. So here's what we've cooked up. 3-teamer. We feel pretty confident that Aaron Rodgers is going to target Devontae Adams. So let's just play over 4.5 receptions. Hopefully it's more efficient this week. Now, the Jets' defense, it's funny. They had a really good defensive coach, and the defense was playing well when that defensive coach was there, but then they fired the defensive coach, and the defense has struggled. But on a short week with a lot of injuries, you got to believe in the talent of this defense. We're going to go with C.J. Stroud over half an interception throw.
And let me remind the people that Thursday Thunder, brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear about all that DraftKings has to offer throughout the show.
A little piratey there. Yar friends.
Are Yar friends? Are Yar?
Can I leave?
You know, sometimes the verbal gaffes can be distracting. I don't think so.
Bolt me.
I think they add.
And finally, we are closing our 3-legger with Breece Hall anytime touchdown score. This 3-leg parlay comes out to plus 445.
Wow.
Thursday.
If I had told you before the season, headed into the halfway point of the season, I've got Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams playing together on the Jets, where is the season right now? You think over, under 4.5 catches is where we'd be? Like that is
and praying for it, by the way. Not that it's a given. It's like, please get to 5.
I'm almost certain we're going to get double-digit targets. So it's basically, can you hit it at like a 500
5
average
slants.
here?
What you're saying is, am I going to see 5 slants in this game that he's been throwing to Devontae Adams for 10 years? I wanted to ask you guys about another football thing that skipped past us.
More football?
Yes, Anthony Richardson. What are you, complaining fan?
Well, no. I mean, it's just, feel like we've been on it, but no, go ahead, please.
We just talked Chet Holmgren.
I know.
Fan. You don't get to be ombudsman.
No.
Fan.
I'm not being ombudsman. Just
Anthony Richardson. We had a quarterback change, and we've ignored it for like 36 hours. Anthony Richardson. That's what it looks like when you've started 20 games since high school of all kinds. Like, you're not quite ready to do all of that. That's a hard job. Here comes Joe Flacco, and that wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part to me was the announcement, we're going the rest of the way with Flacco. Like, Richardson, you don't get this job back. This isn't for you to watch from the sidelines. We're going veteran.
I don't understand why Anthony Richardson took him out of that game. You put yourself in such bad standing with your franchise, with your locker room. Doing that basically made this a reality. It was probably headed there anyways because Anthony Richardson, you watch him in isolated instances and you fall in love with his skill set, but he's never shown you throughout any level of football that he can consistently be a threat.
It's one play, too. Every receiver, running back, taps the top of the head and says, hey, give me one play.
But quarterbacks never do that.
He had just thrown over a 300-pound guy over his back to try and get a first down and got tackled weird on a knee.
Tony, how often do you ask out of a basketball game on your
Never, but that's a different story.
Zagacki.
Quarterbacks can't be doing that.
Built different.
Can't. You can audible into a run. You cannot do that, especially with a comeback player of the year over your shoulder. Joe Flacco, he's been performing better and more consistent than him.
Can I get a bolt? Oh my God.
Dan, what's in your hand?
Mike, organic as always. This is the coloring book that we are selling at lebatardaf.com. And you will see here, it is autographed by me, and everybody will autograph about 500 copies of this book. All of you, I've seen the books. They're all stacked up out there. Giant stacks of coloring books that will be signed by every member of our show. Right now, though, we're having some difficulty corralling Stugotz. I just saw him one of the security video cameras. He was waddling through the parking garage, smoking cigarettes, not signing the books. Mike, I don't see your signature on these books. Have you signed any of the 500
I've signed
books?
Several books.
Okay.
Just picked one that didn't have my signature on it, but we're doing this in rotations. Everybody but Stugotz.
I will tell you, Stugotz will end up signing this, but I am proud of this book for a number of reasons. One of them is that my brother, is an artist, and Angel Resto does the art for my brother now that my brother is gone, and this is a memory of my brother that is meaningful to me, that we are doing to celebrate all of the ways that we look different than the average show. So lebatardaf.com is where you go. Mike, thank you. You are very good at these just natural, organic tosses that don't make these sound like a commercial at all. Exceptional work from you.
Shipping Container Community Theater presents Grim Reaper, A Day in the Lifeless.
All right, it's time for another game of Who Dat Is. This time it's Grim Reaper style, so let's take a look.
That's just a skeleton. It's another skeleton.
With
another skeleton. Are these all just skeletons?
what is happening?
All right, I guess we're doing this again. Carrie Fisher, Patrick Swayze, Prince, Robin Williams. What kind of sick is this, Reaper? I don't want to play your game. Jeez.
What, did no one else sign up for this bit?
I'll play. Zombie. 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 Zombie?
It's all zombies. You must think you're pretty good at this.
Oh, no, I am.
To be
Bob Woodward and Bob Costas. Hell of a Halloween you've carved out for the listeners, Le Batard. Jesus Christ, a couple of Bobs cutting it up.
Yes.
I got my Stugotz moment where he complains about us not talking about sports or Halloween and going too serious and doing too much politics. Oh, man. Yo. Wow. Yep, go ahead.
Yes, spin that fan. Stugotz is here because he is churning out God Bless Football in a way that I want to say is nobody's business, but it's everyone's business around here. God Bless Football is exploding. He's going to Arizona with Billy. Again, they're going to sell out some they're going to make the West Coast bend with all of the people that they bring to this party, all of the weight they bring to this Arizona watch party. When God Bless Football lands in your town, Amin's not going to be there, and that's poor planning by Meadowlark. Poor planning. Tony's not going to be there. Poor planning by Meadowlark. But it's because the Chicago thing went so well that now Smirnoff is saying we got to do this all over the country before football season runs out.
Not to throw my wife under the bus, but she's the reason I'm not going.
Yeah, and my friend Claudia is getting married, so that's kind of why.
I understand.
It is the same weekend as the NASCAR Cup Series finale. The championship's going to be handed out in Phoenix on that weekend, so maybe I can make a quick pit stop.
If you're in Arizona, though, it's Sunday, November 10th, 1 to 6 p.m. Kickoff is at 2:25 local. It's at the DraftKings Sportsbook in TPC Scottsdale.
To be honest, we do have a lot of fun. The last time we did it at Joe's on Weed, me, Billy, and Stugotz. Matt Forte was there with Smirnoff. It was an awesome event. The place was packed. We were watching football. We were doing jazz hands.
Everybody
kissing
was
babies.
really happy. I was taken aback. Look, we don't talk that much about the business of what it is that we've been trying to do here for 3 years, but one of these things, throwing parties near you in a little place that makes everybody happy, the sponsor, everybody, because our fans show up wherever it is that we land. Do you have any idea who's going to be with Billy and Stugotz? Because they're not going to just land quietly.
Mikey A is going to be there too, so the God Bless Football trio will be intact.
And Greg Biffle.
Mike Ryan, you have not been able to find a single supporter anywhere, not even Jeremy. You haven't even Jeremy will talk with anybody about anything. You haven't even been
That's right, Dan.
You haven't been able to lure him into your
We got Martinsville this
racing
weekend.
den.
There are 6 guys still alive for the final 2 playoff spots for the final 4, the championship race at Phoenix. All racers, this is very interesting, all the racers that are presently alive for those final 2 spots, all 6 of them have previously won at Martinsville. I think at the end of the day, Kyle Larson will come out with it.
Please respect the gearhead. The helmet is beautifully made by Mike Fuentes. Shout out to Mike Fuentes, since that's what we're doing today, for creating the gearhead helmet. Before we get to Bob Costas, you are friends with Brad Williams, with Andrew Schultz. You're familiar with what's happening right now throughout comedy and the space that comedians occupy with podcasts that are like the new radio show, it feels like, for your times. What do you mean I can get Santino and Bobby Lee, just their friendship for 2 hours, listen to comedians riff because they figured out how to do a radio show? What do you make of what's presently happening right now, where Joe Rogan is saying of Kill Tony that you can't do that kind of act? A roast comic can't do an event that doesn't have other comedians. It's a losing position. He's analyzing the comedy of it. Jon Stewart is analyzing the comedy of it and saying, it's just jokes. Can we stop? There are more serious things going on here. But in the middle of this fight, to see comedians fighting over what is allowed to be comedy and trying to die on the hill that being racist to Puerto Ricans is going to be something that swings this election in the last week. Like, I can't, with all the shit we've been talking about for 4 years, the idea that that Bad Bunny is now affected by this, and it's going to actually matter in a way that, like, abortion and all the other important stuff we're talking about doesn't matter.
Well, and especially in the wake of, hurricane season and kind of the Puerto Rico still trying to recover from what happened 4 or 5 years ago with Hurricane Maria. Like, that was one of the most powerful things I saw was a video from Mark Anthony, basically running back the tape. Like, look, this is how he feels about us. So, don't get it twisted or whatever. But when it comes to Tony, here's the thing. What a lot of comedians have pointed out, it's like, that's his act. Like, Kill Tony is a roast show. It's a panel of comics, and then they get new up-and-coming people come up, and they just let them do their thing, and then they roast them, and they roast back and all that.
That's all he does. That kind of comedy is his entire thing. If you've invited him, that's what you're inviting him to do.
It's like Don Rickles, 40, 50 years ago, right? The difference is, and I know Don Rickles had done stuff, but, like, the difference is, this was a venue, not physical, but in terms of the event, that is filled with people who aren't in on the joke, right? The whole thing about Kill Tony is that we all get, like, look, it's just jokes, like Jon Stewart says. And when he's doing his show, yes, I believe it's just jokes. But you walk in that building, and these are people that don't get that are jokes. I mean, they're laughing at the wrong parts. They're laughing at the wrong parts, not because, that's a funny joke on stereotypes. They're laughing at, those Puerto Ricans are garbage. And so for Tony to not understand, what he was stepping into, like, you're doing this for an audience that's not in on the joke, that's where it gets lost. And then the other part of it is we didn't know he was going to say these things. Like, he wasn't off script. He was reading off a prompter. They knew the jokes. But again, they didn't get it. They thought, like, these are funny because, like, all these Latinos were saying no to them.
Our first impersonation of the day. It's late in the day
for
that.
It's not impersonation.
It seemed to prove to be a major miscalculation, not just because of what he was saying, but also it got Bad Bunny and J-Lo more involved in this process. So you have a joke that you have to apply context and explain to many people who even that person is, to some of the biggest stars, to a huge demographic here in this country. It was just a huge misstep.
I have found over many, many years that Bob Costas has been like a really eloquent orator and has an unusual perspective and is much bigger than sports for 40 years. Watching him do legitimate journalism better than just about anyone in broadcasting in this space. I don't know, how many jobs outside of sports he was offered to run giant journalism enterprises, but I do want to get his opinions on some of what is happening in America a week before the election. But before we do that, the World Series did just end, and he's also one of the nation's preeminent baseball historians. And I was, Bob, even as I understand how random baseball can be, I felt for Aaron Judge because those small sample sizes will kill you in the postseason. And he's got now, he was 3 wins away from like having a really fun offseason, and now he collapses under the weight of this, which isn't going to get any better in the next 5 months. Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Yeah, well, in fairness to Judge, he did homer and double last night, and he made a great running catch against the wall prior to dropping the fly ball. And dropping the fly ball, an easy fly ball right at him. Judge is a good center fielder. People like to group everything into a narrative. If you follow the Yankees, you know that despite all their talent, they've had a number of defensive lapses and base running gaffes throughout the season. It's something that those who cover the team on a regular basis have been pointing out, and it came back to bite them last night. But Judge is not part of that. Judge doesn't make fundamental mistakes. Judge is a good center fielder, not a gold glove center fielder, because there are others who are better, but he is a good center fielder and obviously an historically great hitter during the regular season. And he had a chance, if not to completely change the narrative, at least to mitigate it by what he did last night. And if the Yankees brought the series back to L.A., as it appeared they were about to do, then he'd have another crack at it. And in the big picture, although you have to celebrate the Dodgers, there's so many things to like about Dave Roberts and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and all the rest. It would have been better for baseball if at least they got a sixth game out of it. The rating would have been higher, and then the possibility of a seventh game would have been in the air. You get a seventh game between these two teams, possibly with one team having come back from 3-0 to tie at 3-3. That would have been the highest seventh game rating since the Cubs broke the curse in 2016. So in the big picture, nothing against the Dodgers. Doesn't matter who ultimately wins, but it would have been better if it had played out at Dodger Stadium.
Now, Costas may have worked at the top of sports show business, but he's never had my father serenade him. I want to read a stat to him.
Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day.
This is from OptaStats. The Yankees are the only major league team to blow a 5+ run lead, allow 5+ unearned runs, commit 3+ errors, commit catcher's interference, commit a balk, all in the same game, regular season or postseason, since earned runs became an official stat in both leagues in 1913. That's the most apocalyptic game ever played. According to in more than 100 years, Bob, the Yankees punctuate this season by playing more poorly than a baseball team has in 100 years.
And you can imagine that if this Game 5 had just taken place one day later, if it had happened on Halloween, every headline writer would have a field day about the house of horrors that unfolded in the Bronx.
A historically bad game, correct? Like historically bad punctuation for a series that everyone had great expectations for.
Yeah, it was really bad. And the Yankees squandered two excellent outings from Garrett Cole. He took the ball in Game 1 and again in Game 5 and pitched like an ace. Now, he was guilty of perhaps a mental lapse. The way that play played out, the little ground ball by Mookie Betts, Cole came off the mound thinking that it would be his play to scoop it up along the first base line and then shovel it to Rizzo. He took a bad angle, and then he realized that he couldn't catch up with the ball. Here we go. All right. So at this point, you can see if he thought that this was Rizzo's play, that he would have come at a different angle toward the base. Now he's caught in no man's land. And Rizzo, who's a very good defensive first baseman, but isn't all that fast, he must have thought Cole would be covering. And by the time he looked up, and as fast as Betts is, the play had been blown.
I've got a very unprofessional circumstance here, Bob. I've got to apologize to you as somebody who's very high up on doing things professionally and well. Chris Cody, Austin Powers seems to be distracted, and him and Mike seem to be giggling and not being as respectful as they need to be to one of the preeminent journalists of our time. So what are you guys talking about back there?
This entire room has just been in a heated debate the entire interview of whether that's a den or a study that you're in right now.
It's got to be a study.
Yeah, it's a study.
I think it's a den. It gives off downstairs.
For me. It's
it
whatever he calls it. It's whatever Bob Costas calls it.
Okay, does he get to decide, or do you? What the vote is there for a study? You guys.
I think Bob would call that a study.
Same.
I don't think. I think you guys have him being more pompous than he is. I think a study gives off pomposity. Yes. Well, I think.
There, look at all the books.
Okay. Well, all right.
Look
what books are there?
Well, then you could call it a library, couldn't you?
Oh,
yeah.
That'd be super pompous.
Yeah.
You see what you did? I mean, come on.
You know, by the way, I don't know who to pin this on, but one of your limited frame of reference peanut gallery guys, and the only reason I know this is because sometimes I follow you, Dan, said at one point, I don't even know why he's called Bob. He's the kind of guy that really should have been, even in grade school, would have demanded that he be called Robert. This is what happens when you don't know jack shit, okay? Saturday Night Live, Letterman, Leno, Carson, Conan, basketball, Pootie Tang, The Paper.
Yes.
If somebody knew as little, even if they were 20 years old, knew as little about baseball history, and then was talking about last night's game with no frame of reference, they'd be laughed out of the room. You know, laughter, that kind of thing that humorless people supposedly have no grasp of. You know what I'm talking about? You know?
Forget about Pootie Tang.
I forgot about Pootie
We'll
Tang.
never forget about basketball.
That is Billy Gill. I'm disappointed that Billy's not here. I was not expecting that word to get back to Bob Costas and Bob Costas to slap him across the face with a fish. I wish he were here because, yes, he spoke ill of Bob Costas in his career, and I thought it was disrespectful. But
not just disrespectful. The disrespectful is less damning than ignorant.
I got to witness a suey for best dismissal.
Yes, it's an excellent dismissal and eloquent. He does these poems, these tapestries. He's been doing it for a long time. I wanted to talk some more baseball.
Okay, sure.
Just to punctuate, the season from a historical reference point and having watched the last, I don't know, quarter century of how much baseball has changed. Baseball has changed more in the last 5 years than it had in the 105 before it. As someone who was against the wild card initially and may have come around, the state of baseball right now is the Dodgers win a title and might be in on Soto as well. And all of the advantages that teams used to have that made baseball even puts us in a World Series where it's Yankees and Dodgers at the end, which is good for the sport. Your take on where baseball is headed into 2025?
Well, just talking about this Yankees-Dodgers thing, people might sort of knee-jerk say, well, of course, they're the franchises in the biggest markets and they have the largest payrolls, but it actually is rather rare for the two best teams over the course of the regular season, or if you talk about the Yankees and Dodgers, almost always competitive and always among the top handful of payrolls, that this is the natural course of things. But in fact, it doesn't happen all that often. And under the new format with 3 wild cards in each league, the first 2 years prior to this one, under this format, 3 of the 4 World Series participants were wildcard teams. And one of the things that mitigates, it doesn't eliminate, but it mitigates the disadvantages of smaller markets is having 3 divisions. And generally speaking, teams of modest payrolls find themselves in the central divisions of both leagues. The Cubs are kind of an anomaly. They have the money, but since they broke the curse, they apparently haven't spent as wisely as they should have. But when you look at those central divisions, Cleveland can compete and do well in the central division. And the Pirates are not hopelessly lost. They just got to come around and figure out how to do it. The Pirates and the Reds are not hopelessly lost in the central division. And now when you have a third wild card, which has really changed it, it's a fact that if you win 85, 86, 87 games, you've got a very good crack at getting into the tournament. And as the Diamondbacks proved a year ago, that's all you need to do if you can get hot in October. So are the medium to small market teams at a disadvantage? Yes, but it's not as big a disadvantage. If you're just talking about a one-off run to the World Series, it's not as big a disadvantage as it might appear. If you're talking about being a contender perpetually almost every year, then yeah, you got to put your money, no pun intended, on the Dodgers, the Yankees, and a handful of other clubs, including now the Mets.
You like baseball more than all the others by how much and why?
Well, when I was a kid and first learning about sports, baseball was the unquestioned national pastime. The World Series was played entirely in the day, much of it weekday afternoon games, but the media landscape was different, so was the sports landscape, and there was never any question about whether a World Series game would get a higher rating than a regular season NFL game. So at that time, you know, it was not unusual that a kid's favorite sport would be baseball. And growing up in New York, I was alive and vaguely, faintly familiar with the Dodgers and the Giants in New York, but I was only 5 years old when they left for the West Coast. And I'm 10 years old when the Mets come into existence. So in the meantime, in between, the Yankees are the only team. They win the pennant every year. Mickey Mantle's the greatest star. That's why I wound up kind of attached to Mantle and the Yankees as a kid. And I've always felt, you know, there can be a literary touch. You know this as a writer. Some of the greatest sports writing has been around boxing, sometimes golf, back in the day, horse racing, but always on that short list, baseball. Not that there hasn't been great writing about other sports, but disproportionately, some of the best sports writing, some of the most literate sports writing has been connected to baseball. And I always liked people who could express themselves well, not just play-by-play guys, but the essayists on television, the Jack Whitakers and the Jim McKays and people like that. So I think I just had a natural affinity for the romance of baseball, the history of baseball. It's the richest history of any American team sport, and it's the sport in which history matters the most. All those things kind of aligned, I guess, with what my own sensibility is. And now get off your lawn.
Bob, as a baseball...
my lawn. Get off my lawn.
Bob, as a baseball historian, I know a lot of people, the narrative out there right now is, hey, Ohtani didn't really show up, Judge didn't really show up, but I'm looking at Freddie Freeman, who's the World Series MVP, and he's now one of 12 players to win both a regular season MVP and a World Series MVP, an 8-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger, a Gold Glover. Can you put into perspective what it is that Freddie Freeman has accomplished in this World Series?
Well, Freddie Freeman is, and you hear this a lot around baseball, he's a baseball player, which goes beyond talent. He has an awareness of the game. In Game 4, the only one the Dodgers lost, when the game was still close, there were runners at first and third. And Freddie's not the fastest guy. Plus, he has a bad ankle. It's better than it was a couple of weeks ago, but it's still bothering him to some extent. He hits a double play grounder, potential double play grounder, and he busts it out of the box. He beats it by a split second, and a run scores. Freddie Freeman does that stuff all the time. When you look at his stolen bases and his percentage of steals, they exceed what you'd expect from someone with that measurable amount of speed. Or extra bases taken. He hits a ball that doesn't go to the wall, but it's going to be slightly in the gap, and he busts it out of the box, and he winds up on second base. He is a terrific baseball player. So too is Mookie Betts. So too is Shohei Ohtani. So that's a big three, all of them MVPs, all of them Hall of Fame bound. That's a big three that very few teams, even historically, can match. When Freeman left the Braves to go to the Dodgers, I remember a conversation on the Baseball Network. Is he a Hall of Famer? And at that point, we thought, well, he's building a candidacy, but for now, it's not sure. It's certain now. This postseason that he's had, the big moments that he's had, until last night, he'd homered in like 6 or 7 consecutive World Series games. Yeah, 4 in this one and 3, I guess, in 21 or something like that. It counts. What you do in the postseason is not going to eliminate someone like Aaron Judge with the overwhelming regular season stats, but you can certainly improve your overall resume. It is, after all, the Hall of Fame. It matters. That kind of impact, those moments matter. I think Freddie Freeman has sewn that up. As respected and admired as he was, and he's a very, very good guy, you can tell. As respected and admired as he was, I think he's even gone up a notch in the estimation of most people after this.
Where did we land on Denner's study?
Am I the judge of this?
Yes.
Yeah, say you leave your phone in that room and you have guests and you're like, oh, guys, I have to hop back into the blank to get my phone.
Yeah. I guess maybe I should be wearing a jacket with elbow patches and kind of drawing on a pipe and stroking my chin while holding Baseball Reference in one hand and Plato's Republic in the other hand.
Well, I was going to ask you to get up and go through some of those books. I think it might just be an office. I don't know.
Or a green screen.
It could just be an office.
It kind of is an office. It's any of those things. It's an office. It's a library. It's a den. It's a study.
He said den before study.
What do you call it?
My fortress of solitude.
Yes.
Hey, there we go.
Angel, please get on those T-shirts. Get off your lawn. I like that better as an insult. So, Bob, I am always, you get aggregated, and I've always found you to be a good journalist, and if not in the center, aspiring to objectivity, neutrality, fairness, equality. It must be so strange to you to see what is happening a week before this election, the presidential standard disgraced in a way that, offends us every day, every sentence, every syllable.
Yeah, look, you asked, so I'm not going to dodge it, but Kamala Harris is not an ideal candidate and may have to grow into the job if she wins it in a way that she hasn't shown us yet. But this is not a political question for millions of us. This is a moral question and would be no matter who opposed Donald Trump. There is nothing wrong with being a Republican or a conservative. Nothing wrong with that. I read George Will on a regular basis and Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal, and people who like to have binary descriptions of people and label me left wing or whatever. I'm like Bill Maher, if you watch Bill Maher at all. I'm a center-left guy, a classic liberal, who is troubled by the distortions of leftism, which is different than liberalism. And some of that is an anchor around Kamala Harris's neck now, because she can't distance herself from some of the worst of it, even if she doesn't fully embrace it. Over the years, excesses on the left hand Fox News their talking points on a silver platter, or in this case, the Trump candidacy points. And I can understand people having serious misgivings about Biden's record, about the way the Dems kind of gaslit the public about Biden's fitness, both as a candidate and to have a second term as president. There are some policies that can't be defended. You cannot defend what has gone on for a long time at the border. You can certainly defend attempts, not just defend, but advocate attempts at reforming the police and justice. The justice system historically has been tilted against African Americans and other people of color. The justice system and policing can be reformed, but the idea that you'll just throw all that out the window and have cities beset by crime and social disorder, that's something that helps the Trump candidacy, even though that candidacy is about a man who is a liar, a lunatic, and an ignoramus. All those things. It's a moral question. And you have never seen, in my lifetime and maybe ever, a presidential candidate with so many of those who are rock solid Republicans and conservatives and who worked closely with him and whose credibility and credentials cannot be questioned, saying the most important word, unfit. He is unfit to hold any position of public trust, let alone the presidency. So there are millions of people who may have misgivings about aspects of Kamala Harris's candidacy, but who cannot stomach the idea that somebody whose entire being is antithetical to actual patriotism, to American principles, to common sense and common decency. That's the thing that, to me, is the deciding factor. The irony of this is that if the GOP wasn't so shameless with not just MAGA people in their red hats, but lifelong Republicans, most of whom lack the spine and devotion to principle to reject Donald Trump. They all come crawling to him and kiss his ring. All the Josh Hawleys and Ted Cruzes and all the rest, and it's a very long list of spineless sycophants. If they weren't so shameless, and if they had come to their senses, it's pretty clear that a center-right candidate, an honest, decent, sane center-right candidate, a Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger, easily defeats Kamala Harris. But at the same time, a sensible center-left Democrat who doesn't have some of the negatives of Biden and some of the wokeness stuff that troubles people, able to distance him or herself from that center-left candidate would easily defeat Donald Trump. But these are our choices at this point. And don't waste your vote on Jill Stein.
How confusing is it to you as somebody who's watched, 40 years of journalism and broadcasting, seeing the media sort of fall to corrupt and corporate interests and now billionaires, running the Washington Post and LA Times? How alarmed are you by how dumb the conversation has gotten a week before the election, where today's talking point is Biden calls Trump supporters garbage, and yesterday's talking point is the comedian speaking at the Nazi rallies at Madison Square Garden?
Well, I heard one of your guys there say that it was a misstep or something of that sort. What happened at that rally? None of that's a misstep. The people cheered that. Maybe not all of them, but they didn't leave in revulsion. And the general tone of it, that guy, whoever the heck he is, got most of the attention. But you've got someone up there saying, all of them, they're all degenerates. All the Democrats are degenerates, you know. And this is something where if you live in a bubble, anything that aligns with what you want to believe about your guy or in a negative way about the other person is automatically embraced. And a mountain of evidence and a choir of angels on the other side of the argument isn't going to convince you at this point, especially because if you're in that bubble of talk radio or Fox News in this case, or the internet, you're either not going to hear about it or you're going to hear defenses of it, deflections, rationalizations. So we know in this case, Biden said what he said. I'm trying to be as kind as possible. Everyone knows what that is. Biden's only 50-50 to make his way through a paragraph of 2 or 3 sentences without a gaffe. He truly misspoke. It's typical of him, and it's the reason why he's no longer the candidate. But this is fodder now for people who don't bat an eye when from the beginning, Trump has always said, if you don't vote for me, you're not going to have a country anymore. He simultaneously brands Democrats as communists, Marxists, socialists, leftists, and fascists. I don't think he could define any of those terms. I don't think he could pass a 10th grade civics or history test. But that doesn't matter. When he says that we will rid the country of the vermin within, we will cast them out. I am your retribution. Kamala Harris is a low IQ individual. All these disparaging things that are actually beneath the level of wit and intelligence that you'd expect from the dopiest kid in the back of the room in the 6th grade. Apparently, those aren't incitements. But the dear little snowflakes on the right, all of whom are always making fun of political correctness and all the rest, they are triggered by the least little thing. So their thing is, hey, if you quote Mark Milley or John Kelly, people of impeccable integrity and honesty and credibility, if you quote them as saying that Donald Trump is unfit, if you quote them as saying that he has fascistic tendencies and that not he is Hitler, no one said that. They said that he said something which indicated that he thought at least some aspect of what Hitler was something that he found appealing. If you quote that, obviously Kelly, whose word are you going to take? Kelly or Trump? Obviously that happened. If you quote that, the way they frame it is you are putting Trump's life in peril. There have been 2 assassination attempts. It's because of left-wing Democratic rhetoric. There has never been rhetoric like what Donald Trump has spewed ever since he descended that escalator. There are people, I'm not going to mention names, there are people within politics and within journalism who actually are afraid for their family's safety if they were to speak as bluntly as perhaps I am speaking now. All right. This isn't like, hey, pot and kettle. The overwhelming amount of what's objectionable and incendiary and what has poisoned our national dialogue comes from the right, not because it's bad to be a conservative or Republican, but because of what Trump is and because of what MAGA is. And by the way, do facts matter at all? The kid who shot Trump, tried to kill him, and did kill the fireman in Butler, Pennsylvania, he fits the profile of a John Hinckley who tried to kill Reagan to impress Jodie Foster. He's unhinged. He also Googled Biden's itinerary. So if Biden had been there, this messed up kid probably would have taken a crack at Joe Biden. You know what that assassination attempt and the one on the golf course have in common? Easy access to weapons that no citizen needs to have. And parents too irresponsible to check a kid who's deeply troubled and has 14 guns in the case of the Butler kid, 14 guns just lying around the house. And the same thing that happened during that time frame is the school shooting in Georgia with enough red flags to have stopped everything in its tracks. That's the real talking point, but it doesn't serve the purpose of the Trump candidacy. So let's forget about that.
I appreciate all of your time as always. Where do you think we're going to be in 10 days? And what are your greatest fears when you think about real infringements on freedom being possible in your lifetime?
Well, too big a question to get into, and maybe others of greater scholarship than myself should address that. But it's pretty clear that from the start, if you go back to 2016, people forget about this. Donald Trump was asked, will you accept the results of the election? He said, yes, if I win. All right. He's already priming his supporters. He's already in the mode, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. There is a very good chance of violence if he does not win. There is every chance that he will contest the election, no matter what safeguards of a fair and credible election there may be. This is who he is. He's not constrained by evidence. He's not constrained by fact. He's not constrained by common sense, common decency, or allegiance to what once were common principles held by everybody across the political spectrum. We have to brace ourselves for that. Now, if he wins, if you've even perused Project 2025, which he lies about and says he knows nothing about, et cetera, because he lies about everything, it's frightening. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with rock solid conservative or Republican principles. Those things should be argued out rationally and civilly in the court of public opinion. This is all about MAGA, the cult of MAGA, the deranged personality of Donald Trump, and his handmaidens in the media and within the Republican Party who don't challenge him. The greatest thing that could have ever happened would be if the Wall Street Journal more forcefully, they're not among the top culprits, but more forcefully, and if right-wing talk radio more forcefully, and if Fox News at all would have said, look, these are the principles and the policies that we believe in. Let us get a sane, decent, honest person to put forth those policies, and let's talk it out with the American public. Instead, they went this way. And 8 years ago, this would be almost impossible to imagine, except for some of us. When he descended that escalator, I said to myself, this has to be a joke. It's just a branding exercise. And I'll leave you with this. You know, there's this label, TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. That's the way all of his supporters try to brush aside all of the reasonable objections to Donald Trump. I'm not going to answer that.
I love that it's a landline. It's good timing. You could.
it's a landline, and it's entirely possible that some of Trump's minions are already trying to tap it. But
you were rolling though.
Yeah.
We'll forgive the intrusion.
This is what I'm concluding with. So Trump derangement syndrome, orange man bad. So like, oh, everyone's just overreacting to this person. He has a brusque personality. He's a bull in a china shop. Yes, he does have an obnoxious and graceless personality. He lacks the dignity that used to be required to be a contestant or appear on the Jerry Springer show. Yes, that's true. But there's a difference between personality and character. And the depths of the deprivation of his character has been shown 1,000 times over. But all you need is January 6th. Everything led up to it, and all the lies and the lies he continues to toss out there connected to it. This is an unhinged person who no sensible person would be comfortable with if they found out he was the principal of the junior high school their son or daughter attended. The real Trump derangement syndrome is, by this time, maybe not in 2016 when people rolled the dice, but by this time, anybody who truly believes that Trump has in any sense, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, morally, that he has ever been fit to hold any position of public trust, let alone the presidency. That is the true Trump derangement syndrome. There is nothing deranged about being appalled by what Donald Trump represents. In fact, it is an expression of common sense, awareness, and decency to feel that way. The derangement is to defend him, not to reject him.
You nailed the dismount, sir. Always a pleasure listening to you. Always a pleasure watching you work. Thank you for making time for us.
And now let us await the fallout. You will go about your business.
Yeah, it's coming
And I
your
will
way.
brace myself for the cascade
It's
of
worth it,
clickbait
Bob,
and out
Bob,
of context
Bob,
idiocy.
if I may.
Is that a panic room?
If I may, Bob.
That's a panic room now. That's right.
If I may, Bob, I will say that I appreciate that you know that a week before the election, of course, you're going to get aggregated. But in my lifetime, you're one of the best to ever do it in this forum, and your ability to condense all of that. That's complicated, weird times we're in 12 minutes is a tribute to a talent you've perfected over 50 years in this business. So thank you, sir. I always
you, Dan,
appreciate
and
you.
Thank you very much, Dan, and company. And in just a few seconds here, let me just tie it up to try and help those who have to write their clickbait headline. Sane, center-right, Adam Kinzinger, Mitt Romney probably wins easily. Center-left candidate, not connected to some of what reasonable lifelong Democrats and liberals even find a bit troubling, that person wins easily. Instead, for differing reasons on either side, we got a coin flip. And we're holding our breath on Tuesday.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, later.
Shipping Container Community Theater presents Grim Reaper, A Day in the Lifeless.
Jeremy, I know we've been light on HR here at Metalark, but we finally hired someone new, and they have a new work contract for you.
I don't see anything about merch. Did David Sampson write this up?
To be continued.